What's going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode of X Factor Fantasy Football. And I don't know about you, but this was a great week. If you love high-scoring games, you got it. If you love defense, you got it. If you love games that didn't seem to quite fit the narrative, then you got that too. So it's going to be a really, really good episode. A lot to get into. Jenna Garcia is going to join us in a little bit. Right now, I got my dog, Jordan Woods, holding it down with me. Jordan, how you feeling? How was your weekend? How's your fantasy team doing?
Week is good. All the teams are doing well as well. I think everybody's on pace to at least go 2-1. We'll see. We'll see if tonight actually comes to fruition. And I know last week I said we were on slated to go 2-1, and Chubb ended up getting hurt. We did get the win, but I don't want to put any more bad juju on my team, or on him. So praise up to Chubb, first of all, and I know we said it on Wednesday's show as well, but let me see. Let's go to the match. 15 points between two people, between Nakua and Rashad White. So I should be good. But
yeah, apparently Nakua / Cooper Kupp is going to get you those points by himself.
Right. It should be good just off of him, but crazier things have happened. So knock on wood. I think this table's made of wood. We should be good. So
you think Rashad White's going to be able to get off versus the Eagles front line?
Running the ball, skeptical, but out of the backfield passing, I think he could get loose at least a few times. I don't think it's going to be anything crazy. I think, if you're PPR, I think it's something between 12, 13 is realistic. But I wouldn't expect more than that unless he scores a touchdown. I'm not looking for a big week from him.
Yeah, I'm playing against Rashad White tonight. I got Jamar Chase and DeAndre Swift, and I need big games from the both of them tonight. But we'll talk about that in a little bit when we get to Monday Night Football. But first, you already know it's time to talk about the best performances of this weekend. And honestly, we can go a couple of different places, but I feel it's only right to talk about this. If you're a Denver Broncos fan, you might want to turn this segment off. If you're a Miami Dolphins fan, then you might want to turn this one up. But Jordan, I don't know if you got a chance to watch that game, see the highlights, see all the production that came out of that game, but that was an absolute fantasy masterclass. There were multiple players on the Miami Dolphins offense that all gave you, I'm not talking about just good performances. I mean, elite level performances from that Miami Dolphins offense. So for you, which of those players stand out the most for you as you think about that Miami Dolphins Denver Broncos game from this last Sunday?
I mean, Devon Achane scored the most, but I'm going to go with Raheem Mostert simply because he was thought to be the guy coming into the season. And when he's healthy, he's always been a guy in fantasy who you could rely upon as at least an RB2, fringe RB1 in certain games. And he's living up to that. I mean, 13 points the first week. We're PPR, so have to adjust if you're a different format. But 13 points the first week, 25 the second week, and then yesterday he had 45. So the production's there. And if he's on the field, you're starting him at your RB2. At this point, again, knock on wood, because he's a guy with injury risk. If I didn't have those concerns, I mean, everybody has those concerns now, but even relative to other backs, he's more of an injury risk. But if those concerns weren't there, I would feel comfortable, especially if you're a no RB kind of guy, with having him as my RB1 and, kind of building out a really stealth group of receivers around that. But at the very least, an RB2, good asset to have. And he's kind of proving when he's healthy what he's already been proving over the past few years. So I'm going to go with Raheem because he's a proven commodity who's kind of just showing what he's always been when he's healthy.
Yeah. Again, Raheem Mostert last weekend, 82 rush yards, 60 reception yards, 7 receptions, 3 rush TDs, 1 rushing touchdown with 12 rushing opportunities. And again, 45.2 points this past weekend. Just an unbelievable game from him. He is currently running back 3 on the weekend. But the funny thing is, his own teammate outscored him this last weekend. Devon Achane had he was only on the field for 41% of the snaps for context. 203 rushing yards, 30 receiving yards, 4 receptions, 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 reception TDs, and he had 18 rush opportunities, and he had 51.3 points this past weekend, which is RB1 so far in week 3. This was a disaster clash from the Denver Broncos. The Broncos should be embarrassed with the performance they put out. Sean Payton said they were embarrassed. The players said they were embarrassed. Shannon Sharp said they should be embarrassed. Anybody and everybody that watched that game this past weekend, they know what time it is. And what's up, Jenna? What's going on, Jenna? We're just talking about the Denver Broncos.
Ooh, I'm glad I didn't miss it all.
And from a fantasy perspective, it should have been worse than it actually was. I was just curious because everybody's focused on the offense, right? I was like, okay, well, what did the Denver Broncos defense have in fantasy? It was only -5, which I think there was another defense as well this weekend that also had -5. I feel like if you give up 70 points, you should have like a -20 or a -15 or something. -5 is not enough to give up all of what they gave up. Shouldn't be on par with any other team that scored this weekend. So have to make some adjustments. I think the fantasy providers will have to look at some adjustments on that on that front. But yeah, it was historic or historically bad, depending on which perspective you're rooting for.
So we're just talking about basically the best performers from this weekend, and we started with the Miami Dolphins. We noted that Raheem Mostert had 45 points this past weekend. Devon Achane had 51.3 points this last weekend, and Tyreek Hill, third fiddle in that offense, had 30.7 points, and he had 9 receptions, 157 yards, 1 touchdown on 11 targets, and he is currently wide receiver 4 for the weekend. And then obviously Tua Tagovailoa, quarterback 2 so far in week 3, 309 yards, 4 TD passes. Oh, by the way, he also had an 88.5% completion percentage. And also, if you were a bettor and you just wanted to put a random bet in and said, hey, will Mike White have a long touchdown score this week? He will. Chosen Anderson, a 60-yard ball in the 4th quarter. The Miami Dolphins had 59 points through 3 quarters, y'all. So if you rostered 1 or 2, some saint out there that had the Dolphins that's from Miami probably rostered 3 of these dudes, and they all won him their league. Again, if you had Tua, you got 28 points. If you had Raheem Mostert, you got 45 points. And then if you had Tyreek Hill, you got 30 points. Yo, that means you got over 100 points with 3 players, y'all. That's insane.
That is pretty insane. There were a couple Broncos players that did all right. I picked up Mims off the waiver wire, and he had 16 points. That was more than anybody else was going to give you from that team.
Yeah, he had a kick return touchdown for 99 yards in the 4th quarter. So, again, let me ask you this, Jenna. With what you're seeing from Marvin Mims, do you feel like he would be – is he a player that more people should consider rostering, and is he approaching flex opportunity for you given his role in the Broncos offense and how it seems to be increasing?
I think so, just especially with what you see from Russ. Like, I think we talked about this. Just Russ still has the long ball. He still got that pass, the distance available, and he had I think he hit Mims, if I'm remembering correctly, right in the chest a couple times in this game, and it didn't turn out to be a catch, but still, like, that could be next round, next game, next weekend. So I think it's worth picking him up if he's in your league. It didn't cost me anything. I didn't put any fab on it.
Right. Yeah, you didn't have to. We got a comment. Somebody, a grieving fellow Broncos and Denver supporter. Let's go Swipa and everyone else. At least we have the Nuggets. Jordan doesn't have the Nuggets. He is a Lakers LeBron fan. Only thing keeping this Broncos fan going, that's a fact. Jordan, you are not involved in that. You are a LeBron fan with 4 championships, so you don't get to be included in that. But yeah, it was a hard weekend, y'all. I'm not even going to hold you. I wasn't even upset at one point. I was hoping that the Miami Dolphins were going to run up the score and get that field goal. That way they can get the NFL record for 73 points. Because that was insane. Absolutely insane. Jordan, Jenna, are there any other games or any other performers from this last weekend that you want to highlight?
Jenna, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to highlight Keenan Allen's performance with the Chargers. It's tricky, right? Because I have Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen in our league, and then in my other league, I had Kirk Cousins. And so I was like, I don't even know how to cheer for this game. I don't know what I want to happen here. But actually, it worked out. Kirk put up big points. Keenan Allen put up big points, 45 points in our league. Obviously, 1 touchdown, 49 yards, and 18 receptions for 215 yards. That's crazy.
Right.
So he did really well. And then Justin Herbert, I think he was the leader for QBs this week. Is that right?
Yeah, he's currently QB1 with 29.3 points, 405 passing yards, and 3 touchdowns.
So great week to be playing Swipa.
Oh, my goodness. That's nuts. That's an insane comment, by the way. Jordan, what about you? Anybody else?
Few guys. Obviously Devontae, but I feel like Devontae at this point is Devontae. It's whatever.
No, but Jordan, but people were concerned that when him and Jimmy, would Jimmy be able to make him a wide receiver 1? And based on what we saw last weekend, Jordan, he had 20 targets.
Yeah, he's too open. That's the thing. He's a receiver who gets open, so it doesn't really matter. I mean, I guess it matters if you have a functioning arm. But if you have a functioning arm and you're behind any semblance of an offensive line, he's too open, so he's going to get the football. That's his thing. He's a mastermind at route running and getting open. It's not like he's just a deep threat who you're going to have to rely on a talented quarterback to drop it in the bucket. No, he's open all the time across the middle of the field. He can line up at any position, at any receiver position. He can line up in the slot. He can line up outside, and you're going to get production. So not really I was ever too worried about him. Just thought that there might be an option or two, me personally, that you might take over him. But he, bona fide top 3 receiver still. But he's almost a given. I think for me, 2 guys that stick out were guys that were some more question marks coming into the season. One, Adam Thielen. On the field for, see here, it says 92% of the snaps this week, 31 points. He still looks like Adam Thielen. He's a bit of a reliable. He's the best receiving threat that they have. I know he was somebody who I think can't remember who picked him in our league, but I was like 1 pick away from getting who I was targeting late in the draft for this very reason. He's an old reliable kind of guy. He's a guy who I wouldn't rely on him to be your wide receiver 1 or 2, but he's a perfect wide receiver 3 to me, especially if you're trying to build up at other positions or consolidate your team around, going to get a bigger trade asset. He's I don't know how much fab I would spend on him personally, just because, again, it is kind of hit or miss. But if you're like desperate at receiver right now and you need to slot somebody in, he's definitely a guy I would look at. And then someone who's more, pretty much on every roster is Kenneth Walker. He's on my roster. There's a lot of questions coming into the season around exactly how that running back room would be split. And granted, it is early, but even when they are splitting, pretty much the snap percentage, he's making the most of it. He's getting the goal-to-go opportunities. He's an improved pass catcher out of the backfield this season, which is an area people thought was a weakness coming into the year. He's good in between the tackles, or he can break one, but can he catch the ball out of the backfield? Yes. The question is yes. He caught a couple big games out of the backfield yesterday, and he's shown more of an ability to do that as the season has started. So even if Charbonnet is splitting the reps with him, I think K9 is a confident RB2 at this point. Maybe more if he were, if his usage goes up, but if he's splitting, confident RB2, and I think the last couple of games have solidified that.
Yeah, we also have from this last weekend outside of Adam Thielen, Tank Dell for Houston. Tank Dell had 145 reception yards, 5 receptions, and a TD for 25.5 points. Unfortunately, Mike Williams, who goes down with an ACL injury, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But he had 7 receptions for 121 yards. Amari Cooper, another one of those dudes that every year gets slept on, 7 receptions for 116 in the TD. Cortland Sutton, you could have got him late in the draft. 8 receptions, 91 yards, and and also a TD, had 2 fumbles though. And then DJ Shark, another person that you can also pick up, 4 receptions for 88 or 86 and a touchdown as well. So a lot of big performances out there. If you got Jerome Ford, then you got a good performance out of him too. 19 points, 18 rush yards, 33 reception yards, but he also had a rushing touchdown and a receiving touchdown. Love to see that usage. Jarek McKinnon outscored Isaiah Pacheco. And then on top of that, some other players. CEH somehow still there, taking reps away from Pacheco and McKinnon. So that's what it is, y'all. But let's get to the next segment. Biggest disappointments. And I think that as the person who is staring down an 0-3 start to fantasy football, I'm probably the best one situated to talk about this. And I think Justin Fields has to be at the top of that list. Justin Fields, another game that he has not yet crossed. 15 points. Week 1,
Bless
14. Bless
It's
you.
definitely something to sneeze at. It's
Week
definitely
2,
something to sneeze at.
15.
Thank you.
Week 3 versus Kansas City, 10.6 points. Yo, what in the world is going on with Justin Fields? But there's hope. There's hope, Justin Fields manager, because he's playing the worst defense in the NFL next week. He's playing the Denver stinking Broncos. If this is any week for a get-right game versus Justin Fields and the Denver Broncos, it is this weekend. So Justin Fields, this is his last opportunity, or he is getting traded, absolutely traded.
Concur. 100%. I think for me, the biggest disappointment would be I'm gonna go Josh Jacobs. We're 3 weeks in. He's yet to crack 11 points in any week. 9 points the first couple of weeks, and then 11 points yesterday. And granted, he was going against a very he's gone against the past couple weeks a couple tough defenses, but he's not showing any ability to break any runs. If you watch the past couple of games, he's not showing any. He still looks kind of rusty, vision wise, just instinctually. He still looks kind of rusty, but I mean, what good do those excuses do you if you're starting him week after week after week, right? It could be valid, but you're still starting him and still expecting production, and you're not getting it to this point. So, I would say next week is kind of a telltale week because they're playing the Chargers, whose defense is suspect to say the least all across the board. So, if there's going to be a week where he kind of kicks up and showcases the draft capital you probably spent on him, granted, he did go middle, 3rd, 4th round in certain drafts, but a lot of people were still expecting him to be RB1, fringe RB1, or at the very least a solid RB2. And he's not giving you that at all, especially if you draft him as an RB1. So, people thought this being not having gotten the long-term deal, that they would kind of, for lack of a better phrasing, use him up. I mean, we got him. He's going to maybe only be here for 1 year. Let's get all the carries out of him. Let's use him and use him up. But that's not what we're seeing, or even with what he is getting. Even the snap percentage is still there. He's still around 75, 80% of the snaps. So it's not like he's ceding a bunch of carries. It's just that they're not running the ball quite as much as you might expect them to first couple of weeks, and he's not been efficient. So I'm going to go with Josh Jacobs.
Well, what's the worst you'd be willing to accept for Josh Jacobs in the deal right now?
Willing to accept. I probably, obviously depends on what position I'm trading for, but I would trade a fringe RB2 or 3. I would receive in fringe RB2 or 3 and maybe like a depth receiver or something. But again, he's one of those guys where the snaps are still really high. So to me, odds are at some point he's going to get on a little bit of a roll, even if it's not what it was last year. So I have a hard time accepting anything other than a guy who I know is going to be getting starter level volume, whether that be at the RB position or at the receiver position. I need somebody who's going to be at least getting starter level volume or snap percentage to justify me trading away a guy who I know for a fact is going to be getting a lot of volume when he's on the field, and he's going to be on the field a lot.
Not you, Jenna.
I guess for my rosters, I'm just like going over them real quick here. I was disappointed in Hubbard and Henry this weekend. Obviously, like Derek and you guys, I got to tell you, good advice last week when you told me to start Cook over Breece Hall, because once again, we watched Breece Hall not get any touches. Like, I want to put Breece on this list, but it doesn't feel like it's necessarily exactly his fault even. So it's like, is he the biggest disappointment? I mean, if you own him and he's on your roster in fantasy, I mean, like, you're disappointed in what you're getting out of him production wise, but it's not necessarily his fault. I don't want to call him a disappointment because he's not getting any touches. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess I thought I was going to get more out of Hubbard this week. Derrick Henry, obviously, I thought that he was going to have more than what he gave me, 2 points. 2 points this week, 20 yards, 11 carries. It's just not going to do it for me.
Snapped by Marcus Spears again as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, but don't you have Kittle too, Swipa?
Me? No, I have Dalton Schultz in this league, and he's doing absolutely nothing.
Oh, I forget. I thought you had told me you had Kittle, and you were like, one more week, and if Kittle doesn't perform, I'm out on him. Somebody said that to me, and Kittle came through this week.
Well, Dalton, the thing is, I mean, you're thinking probably Dalton Schultz, rather. You're probably thinking tight end is rookie quarterback's best friend, right? Turns out they don't have a rookie quarterback. They have a guy who looks like he's been starting for 3 or 4 years.
With 2 wide receiver twos on the roster, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. So might be a little different over there.
Yeah. Jenna, so Derrick Henry, at this point, would you be willing to move off of Derrick Henry if you were a manager with him on the roster? And if so, is that something you'd be willing to do as soon as this week because of what you're seeing from him in his snap count and his production?
It's tough, right? Because it's not like we knew that Derrick Henry was 29 years old going into this draft, into our fantasy draft. We knew that like the production can go down as you get older, that he's carried a big load for the Titans for a couple seasons now. So I wasn't sure. I wanted to believe like it was just going to be positive. And like you said, rookie's best friend, he's going to get all these carries, tiny little passes. I feel like the tight end overall, like in the league this season so far, has not been nearly as productive or relied upon as it was last year. And maybe that's because we're at the beginning of the season and I'm thinking of last season as a whole. But I don't know, do you guys feel that way too? Like, I don't feel like tight ends are producing like as much as last year, or like that quarterbacks are throwing to them nearly as much.
I think it's just some of the names outside of the top couple. I mean, Hawkinson is, Kelsey is. But outside of those top couple names, the names you might have expected to be producing after them aren't necessarily, and then some other names who you might not have expected to be producing are. Like a guy even though I expected this out of him, I just couldn't draft him late, was Sam Laporta. I mean, he was a shoo-in to step right in and perform well at a starting tight end level this season. You could see it coming from a mile away. It's just a matter of how much of a game of chicken you were going to play in the draft of being able to get him. And I waited too late to try and grab him, but definitely saw that coming with him. He was always going to be that kind of guy. I don't think Swipa may have. I think you're on mute.
My bad. I was saying Laporta's doing that work on 8 receptions. On top of that, like that's not even a lot of touches for a tight end to have to I guess when I'm thinking about fantasy points, right? When I'm specifically thinking about
to get what he got,
to get what he got in fantasy points, it felt like to me you're going to need at least like averaging 10. He's the closest that's getting to 10. Kelsey's got 7 this week, but then you go down just a couple spots. Brown, Farman, Hawkinson. Well, Hawkinson's had 8 receptions this week, but Donald, Farman, Brown, they got 2 receptions and they still put up big points for fantasy. So I don't know.
Yeah, it
Tight
depends
end's
on
just
what-
been a really tricky position for me to this year.
Yeah, some tight ends are goal line guys who you're looking at. You get in the red zone, they're threats to be primary targets down there, and then certain guys are just into their team's offense, no matter where, like just consistently getting fed in the flow of the offense. So it really just depends on like what the team is and how they tend to use their tight ends. And certain teams, like if you're Cowboys, I mean the Cowboys have like on any given week 3 different tight ends who you might see on the field. Two, you might see two on the field at the same time. A lot, it's hard to know which one. Ferguson seems to be the guy, but it's hard to know when you get down near the goal line which one could be the actual target. Because they have 3, or they might even have 4 guys. They have at least 3 guys who they regularly rotate in. So it's just becoming that kind of position outside of the top guys.
Well, y'all, we got 2 games today. We got some more stuff we can get to, but we can save that for Wednesday. Because I got some player-specific stuff to ask you about. But we have 2 games today for Monday Night Football. We have the Eagles versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and then we have the Los Angeles Rams versus the Cincinnati Bengals. And it sounds like Joe Burrow will be playing. So starting with the Eagles and Bucs game, who are you most willing to play and put in your lineup tonight for the Eagles and for the Bucs?
I'm starting everyone I would normally start on the Eagles. So Devonta, AJ, Jalen, Swift, Goddard. Like I'm starting all my guys. At this point, if you're starting a defense tonight, they're probably the defense you're starting, right? If you still have yet to play a defense this week, you're probably starting them out of any of the 4 that are left to play tonight. And then on the Bucs side, I'm starting Rashad unless I have a better option available flex-wise from the other teams. Because Rashad is a guy who, depending on the team you have, might be in your flex, might be one of your RBs, or could be on your bench, just depending on what team you have. And then I'm starting Mike. Godwin is the one where it's kind of borderline. You know, we've yet to see that the targets are there, but he hasn't. I think he and Baker still have a few things to work out chemistry-wise between the 2 of them. He certainly has the talent. He looks like Chris Godwin on the field still. But he's a guy who, if you have another option, you might consider swapping him out for if you have another guy who you could play tonight. But I wouldn't feel bad about starting him and getting like 10 to 12 points or something like that. But
so if you had a flex opportunity tonight, you would put Puka and would you put Kyron Williams over Chris Godwin?
That's tough because Kyron. I mean, yeah, Kyron's going against Cincy. Yeah, probably so. Because I think you kind of give yourself a floor there between Kyron. And it also depends on what you need, right? You know, if I need 2 guys to go off, if I'm throwing a bit of a Hail Mary and I'm down a lot, I'm probably going to start Godwin and Puka, or I'm going to split that up a bit. If I need something safe, I'm probably going to start Kyron and Puka, because between the 2 of them, you know, it's going to take up a lot of the Rams offense. So that gives you a higher floor, even if it doesn't give you a higher ceiling. So a lot of this always comes down to every week. When you come down to these Monday night situations or situations with only a couple games left, what do I need? Do I need a chance for somebody to go off, or do I need just really safe production to get me over the finish line?
What about you? You know, what are you looking at for the Buccaneers Eagles game? You like that? And then obviously you can open up the other game too with the Bengals and Rams. Anybody that you would like to play out of one of those games? You're muted.
I'm not muted. I clicked the button to unmute and it still mutes me. I don't understand. But anyways, I said Jordan. What I said when I was on mute was that Jordan covered a little bit of what I was thinking about too, because I have Kyron and Puka in my other league, and I have Joe Burrow. So the hard part for me this week was like, do I wait? Or do I start Joe and wait? Just believe that he's going to have a game finally, right? Because this is kind of like a game he needs to have tonight. He needs to show up a little bit. And I'm glad that I started Kirk because he still showed up and he's been consistent. They're like the best 0-3 team I've seen. I'd be like not worried. You're 0-3, Swipa. I'm more worried for you than I am for the Vikings.
Well, I can't do anything about injuries, Jenna.
Well, I'm curious what you got to say about, are you starting Mixon tonight? You know, if or Jamar Chase, or, you know, because I know Jamar Chase, you were feeling like he had kind of let you down a little bit.
He has that. You have, the thing is, if you drafted Chase or Mixon, you probably got them definitely in round 1, and then you got the other one in round 3 or 4. So at this point, it's like you have to. One's your RB2 or 1, depending if you want to do a wide receiver, and the other one was supposed to be your best player in fantasy. So you just have to trust the process that he's going up. They're both going up against the Los Angeles Rams. There's just no way they should be locked up versus the Rams. Now, Mixon is going to be running in Aaron Donald all night, but I'm still having to play him and start him. But Jamar Chase is a for sure start. Higgins is a for sure start. Mixon is, if you have him, you're more than likely going to have to start him. I'm playing Kyron. I'm playing Puka.
T. Boyd.
I mean, if you have to, yeah. I mean, but that's like a flex. That's like you're like in a 12 or 16 man league if you're playing, or 12 or 14 person league. If you're playing Tyler Boyd in your flex, more than likely. But I'm for sure. I mean, I think Higbee's the one that's a little bit of a toss up there. But if you're this late in the game and you're trying to play a tight end, then you're more likely that's all you have. So you got to play Higbee. But yeah, I don't know what to expect from Joe Burrow tonight. He's clearly not 100%, but they're playing him, and they say that he's going to be healthy enough to go. So really just have to hope for the best, and just Lord willing that he doesn't hurt himself any further than he already is. So it's going to be a fun night. It's going to be a fun night. Who do you think? Go ahead.
I was going to say it makes sense to play him, in my opinion. I mean, if you don't play him and you lose, your season is probably on the brink, if not over anyway. So you might as well play him if he gives you the best chance, and even with the risk to hurt him. And they're in between a rock and a hard place either way. So it makes sense to play him.
Right. Well, y'all, that's going to do it for the Week 3 Fantasy Football Expected Fantasy Football Recap. We have 2 Monday Night Football games. We'll be back on Wednesday to discuss the results of these games and also how to play this waiver wire coming up, because Jenna sounds like she's been listening to the show and to get Puka and Kyron off the bench somehow in her league. I have no idea how, but those could be some potential league winners right there. But we'll be back on Wednesday with another episode of Expected Fantasy Football.
Peace.